kick things off in Spain, where Trent Alexander-Arnold was officially presented as the latest addition to the Real Madrid squad. The journalists were out in full force to welcome the former Liverpool player, but then there was a bit of a surprise at the press conference.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias tanto al presidente Florentino Pérez como al Club Real Madrid por esta oportunidad. Fichar por un club como Real Madrid no sucede todos los días. Es un sueño hecho realidad. Estoy muy feliz y orgulloso de estar aquí. Tengo muchas ganas de enseñarle mi juego a los madridistas. Pero soy consciente de que jugar por Real Madrid es una gran responsabilidad, pero estoy listo para darlo todo por el equipo y los madridistas. Tengo muchas ganas de enseñarle mi juego y ganar muchos títulos y ser campeón y crecer y disfrutar con los mejores del mundo. Gracias y a la Madrid.
Well done.
Wow.
Spanish is better than yours, Dan.
5 years I was in Spain.
He's been there 2 minutes.
Sid Lowe joins us. Sid, what a power play from Trent.
I tell you what, there could not be a better TV presenter to go through this than you, Dan Thomas, because you know exactly what this means. It was genuinely. I mean, you know how there's a section of the media that loves to use the word stunned. You know, so and so stunned fans last night. This was actually genuinely a moment where people were kind of a little bit stunned, because when he said that first bit, "Buenas tardes a todos," good afternoon everybody. At that point, you think, okay, that's quite normal. And then the next line was in Spanish, and there was a kind of a moment. And by the way, I should point out, this is two different rooms. There's the basketball court where they do the presentation bit, and then the press room. In the press room, the journalists are watching this on a screen. In the basketball court, obviously, it's the dignitaries, the directors, and so on. And he starts doing the second line in Spanish. You think, hang on a minute. And then the third, and then the fourth. He's going to do the whole thing in Spanish. And it was really well delivered. And as you say, I mean, I think one way of looking at it is to talk about it as a power play. And he said himself, when he came into the press conference room, having done the presentation, which, by the way, he then did in English. You know, this was just this short speech of a 1 minute and 1 second. But he said, yeah, it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like it surprised a few people, and I think it did. And I think it did make an impact. And of course, the context of this is that, generally speaking, British players come to Spain and don't speak particularly good Spanish. Obviously, the other context of this is the last really big name British player pre-Bellingham was Gareth Bale, and one of the things that people attacked him for was not speaking Spanish. And so to do this the first time, I think really did have an impact. Now, I don't want to overplay this, because fundamentally this is someone preparing a speech and delivering it very well and doing it without cue cards, and that's pretty impressive. But obviously what matters is now how he plays. But I do think it made an impact, and I do think it surprised people.
And we're just going to try and start at your mic, as we're just seeing the first pictures of Trent in a Real Madrid shirt. Don, overall, is this going to work, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was well impressed with that, by the way, because the hardest thing for a footballer when you go into a dressing room, I've never had it, but if you've got to try and listen and learn and try and listen to what's going on and what's being said, and you haven't got a clue what's going on, that's where I think the English boys would struggle. He's just absolutely nailed that press conference there. It was perfect. Took him 2 minutes. It took you 4 years.
And,
still up that
and he only knew he was going to Real Madrid a couple of weeks ago. So he's done very well.
Well, the Liverpool fans are going, how long have you been learning that, lad? He nailed it. Fair play to him.
Yeah, very much so. Sid, you look at the position that he's going to take up when we and obviously you kind of think, is it a one-on-one battle with Dani Carvajal? Is it that simple? Obviously, we fixed Sid's mic and then broke his headphones in the process.
Tell you the hardest thing, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry, Daniel. Yeah, no, I missed the bit where you directed it at me.
All right. Sid, you can answer.
We've started really well tonight, haven't we?
Well, standard. standard show, to be fair. Sid, Dani Carvajal, is it basically between him and Trent? Is it that simple?
Well, I think the logical first answer to that is yes, but I actually think you can expand it beyond that and talk about alternatives. And it was interesting actually that today in the press conference, one of the questions asked by one of the Spanish journalists was very direct, and it actually didn't directly say, is it you or him, but it said, what do you think of Dani Carvajal? And I don't know if there was kind of some optimism that Trent would say, oh, he's rubbish, I've got his place, it's fine. But Trent said, great player, respect him a lot. I think, look, if Real Madrid play four at the back, of course the natural place for Trent Alexander-Arnold is to be the right back. But I think Xabi Alonso may not do so. So that may open up the possibility of them both playing. Because if it is a straight choice, and if Carvajal is back at his best, and you want a right back who's a defensive right back and has some of those other qualities, to be honest, Carvajal is probably ahead of Trent Alexander-Arnold. But I think it's about finding a fit, if at all possible, for both of them. I personally, and I don't know what the rest of you think, but I personally am not entirely won over by the idea of Trent as being an actual midfielder. I think was being a defender, maybe released from some of those defensive duties, yes. But I'm a little bit dubious about the idea of him being an actual midfielder. But I think Madrid will try it. I don't know if they'll stick with it.
The narrative around Trent from most cities, obviously, great attacker, can deliver a fantastic ball, suspect defensively. Is that a narrative that's carried itself to Spain?
No, not really. And it was interesting, actually, today that I mean, look, I say not really. Of course, this is something people are aware of. And, of course, when people have analysed his game, when they've talked about what he may bring to Real Madrid, part of the analysis has been that we know there are some defensive weaknesses. But he was asked today, and I thought it was an interesting question, whether he felt that Spain was the kind of place, how do I put this, culturally, in footballing culture terms, that actually won't attack him so much for being defensively flawed, that actually will appreciate those offensive qualities more, that maybe Real Madrid are the kind of club that, bear in mind, that have had Roberto Carlos, that have had Marcelo at left back, two guys who are fundamentally attacking players, and that perhaps there would be an embracing of his approach. And what he said actually was not really to engage with that question, but so much as to say, look, and I think it was an important point actually what he said. He said, look, I have played the way my managers have asked me to play. And if people don't appreciate it, well then, it is what it is. I'll just keep on playing, and so long as my teammates and my manager appreciate it, I don't really care.
I think fans of La Liga, of Real Madrid in particular, this is great, isn't it, chat?
Without question.
Someone with spark, someone adds a little bit of flair, which is what you want.
Without question. And to that comparison with Dani Carvajal, of course, it's inevitable. Carvajal trying to come back from a serious injury, so we see how that takes shape. And then it may just very well be a case of horses for courses. No question in my mind, Carvajal is better defensively, but Trent Alexander-Arnold has a better passing range. So how that plays out over the course of a long domestic and European season for Real Madrid, inevitably time will tell. But it gives Xabi Alonso different options as to who he employs on that right-hand side, or whether it's one or the other, or both at the same time. And it does give Real Madrid that extra attacking threat on the right-hand side, which maybe they need, maybe they rely on. Maybe they have the midfielders to cope with, as Sid is pointing out, as Real Madrid have done over the course of many a season. The other thing to this is, and as for all the criticism that we've levied around Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's been the right back in two Liverpool teams that have delivered 2 titles in the last 30 years. So for all his issues, somehow Liverpool were able to cope with them and be the defining Liverpool team of certainly the last 30 years. Can't be that bad, can it?
Sid, it's interesting, obviously, Real Madrid getting these deals done before the Club World Cup. Lots of speculation about who could be making way for these new members within the squad. Obviously, different position, but a lot of talk about the future of Rodrigo. Marca reporting that the Brazilian is going to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I must say I'm a little bit sceptical about these kind of reports this early. I think if you look at the way that these... Look, this isn't about attacking Marca for this story. It's about the kind of, if you like, the enthusiasm or the determination to see something right from the very start. So from that very first training session which Xabi Alonso takes as coach, there's a little bit of footage, and bear in mind that we're not at the training sessions. The footage we see is the footage that Real Madrid TV put out, and there's a little bit of footage of Xabi Alonso explaining something to Rodrigo, and Rodrigo watching Alonso move and watching him go, and a lot has been made of, I think, very little. And this idea, oh look, he's seen that in Alonso there's a way of doing this. Now bear in mind that this is a training session in which the immense majority of Real Madrid's starting players aren't there because they're on international duty. Rodrigo's one of the few. So you kind of already in this situation which, well, there's the focal point. there's a player listening to Alonso, there's a player getting a solution from Alonso. I just think it's incredibly premature to be making those kind of conclusions now, given that Alonso hasn't yet definitively decided even what the structure of the team is, let alone who the players within that structure are.
Meanwhile, talk to us about Franco Mastratuano, Sid.
Can I give you the honest answer here?
Yeah.
And that is that I can't talk to you about him. I really don't know very much about him. I know there's a huge amount of excitement here because there's a belief that this is kind of the emerging player of a new generation, a footballer who could potentially be absolutely fantastic. Of course, it fits with that idea that Real Madrid have been going for over the last 6 or 7 years, actually maybe even a little bit longer than that. Bear in mind how young they signed Vinicius, how young they signed Rodrigo, that idea of going to South America, finding the player that's, in theory at least, set up to be the next great player of his generation. You could say that this was maybe the idea with Endrick as well, where you pay very, very high fees for very young players, but that you think in the long run will be proven to be not particularly high fees, because you are getting the very best talent of the next generation. That is how they think he fits into this. I'll be honest with you, I'm not in a position to judge that.